What a rare privilege it is to compete. Many an athlete has applied themselves partly to something, being too scared to take the responsibility of saying that they did their best. Despite the best laid plans, the nature of live sports is chaos. And so, imperfection is not at odds with being fully prepared and meeting the moment with the best version of yourself. Part of what makes this thing worth doing is the joy of learning how to upgrade your arsenal. The rest is the people you decide to go along that journey with. Okay, today I just want to talk through some of the learnings from Fittest to the Coast. So I just got back yesterday. Last night I flew back in and just kind of want to talk through some of the stuff I've learned, some of the stuff that, I took some notes. I'm always taking mental notes as a coach, and I wrote down some of the stuff that I was thinking about throughout the course of the weekend. And the stuff I'm talking about today is a little bit bigger picture stuff. It's not nitty gritty on program design or like those sorts of things. It's very much like, and by the way, I do take like mental notes on like the things that we need to be working on when I see deficits or strengths for athletes, right? Just going throughout the weekend, I'm just like noting different things constantly in my mind as it's going to relate to like how their training should look moving forward, of like certain skills we need to work on, certain things that look really crisp or look a little bit out of touch, or like, when they were able to push in certain workouts, or like where their capacity is in certain things. And that's just like, part of like what I'm constantly assessing. And like, I do that with athletes training as well, but I think it's obviously super relevant when it comes to competing, because one, I'm like watching them go through the entirety of their event every time, where you just pick up on stuff, and then you're also watching them go through all their habits of warm-ups and cool downs and flushing and stretching and eating and all of that stuff. So there's just a lot of information, and there's obviously things that I'm going to be taking away that I can apply specifically to athletes training. But there's also things that are a little bit more like bigger, overarching things that I think are going to be valuable to other people that I coach, and hopefully other coaches and people in the space who are athletes as well. So hopefully you guys learn something from it, or like spark some thoughts for you that are helpful. First little point here I had, and I have several that I'm going to go through, I think like 4 or 5. One is just like how athletes interpret stress, because everybody who prepares effectively for an event is going to be stressed for their event, whether they admit it or not, or admit it outwardly or not, right? It's something where when you have put a lot of time and energy into something, you care about it. And I think sometimes people are just scared to say they actually care. And it's like when you've put a lot of time and energy in something, you should care about it. And that doesn't mean that you can't, it doesn't mean that you can't, like saying that you're stressed or saying that that you care a lot about it, that's not some sort of like a cop-out answer. Like, that's being honest with yourself. And I think that like honest about like where you're at with things is like one of the first steps of like getting to your best performance, which is what I care about for people. So I think first of all, like just admitting to yourself that like stress is just arousal. Like it's your body's way of getting you prepared to do something that's extremely hard. Like you're taking yourself to max effort across several events throughout the course of a weekend. And that is just something that it's not comfortable. It's extremely taxing, both like mentally, emotionally, obviously physically, but it's like every system is put on high alert when that happens. Even if it was just a very challenging workout in like a class atmosphere, we're not on a stage being compared to other people with like a crowd watching and other people there who are invested in you. Even if that's not the case, you're still going to be super aroused for that, right? Like that's part of what the stress response is doing. It's getting you ready for something that is potentially life-threatening, right? Like you're taking yourself to maximal exercise. So I think for athletes in that situation, it's like you can remind yourself of times where you folded under pressure, right? It's like, well, man, I felt super nervous this one time and it didn't go well at all. Or you could even just like focus on like how overwhelming like those inputs are, right? How overwhelming your stress is. which again is very like internalizing it that way is also, if you're focused on like the stress symptoms themselves, this is not always helpful, right? I think understanding that like, hey, this is part of the deal. Like when I compete, I'm going to be stressed. I'm going to be nervous. I'm going to have this arousal. And then reminding yourself that when you have heightened arousal, that is performance enhancing for you, right? And if you remind yourself of specific times where it was like, okay, I was nervous before this one lift and I lifted super great. Like I hit a PR. Versus like reminding yourselves of like, I was super nervous before this event and I missed that one snatch, right? Like you probably have instances of both. If you've been like competing for any length of time, you have instances of both. So it's like, you got to figure out which memories you can call on that are going to be helpful and be performance enhancing rather than performance degrading. And I think that just comes down to rehearsing those things in your mind. And obviously you could tie that back into a future performance, right? If you got a lift coming up, it's a clean complex. It's like, okay, what other competitions that I've done or online qualifiers or things where I was nervous and I hit a really good lift, and just continue and replay those things in your head and just remind yourself of that stuff. Now, personally, like when I went and competed, I was always extremely nervous before competitions. I put a lot of pressure on myself to perform. It's also like self-imposed, right? No one else was doing this to me. I just put it on myself. But this was one of the things I always made sure that I did, was just reminding myself that I'm somebody who, when the pressure's on, I perform well. Better than I could, right? And like one of the easiest ways for me to always do that was, typically you always get the workouts in advance, except for with a very few exceptions, where you're going to have opportunities to practice them. So it's like I do them in practice. When I come out on the floor, they're almost always faster. And that just means that I'm somebody who, when it matters, I can turn it up and I can do that. And I think reminding of yourself and like how to interpret that stress, remind yourself of those times that you were able to perform when you were stressed. I think that's your starting place. So everybody's dealing with the stress. It's just a matter of how you do it. Then this next one like ties in extremely closely, obviously, right? It's I said, mind your language. And I will say that my athletes competing this weekend were generally quite good about their outward language they use. Like, for example, I didn't hear like, oh, I hate thrusters. Oh, this next event's going to be bad for me. It's a little too cold outside. I didn't sleep great. Right. I didn't hear a lot of that, which I was glad to hear, because I hear that kind of stuff all the time. As you're just in the warm-up area, you're walking around, you hear other people, like that stuff's super common. So kudos to my athletes. And again, that doesn't mean that the internal language was something different, but it's good that there wasn't this spewing of that negative talk. And I will say, like, admission of reality is not in opposition to the avoidance of making excuses. So, for example, you can admit reality and say, I'm really sore today. Or, man, my lungs are kind of shot, right? You're like coughing, you got Fran lung, right? Like, you don't have to like pretend like that doesn't exist, as long as you state reality and don't project that inevitably means that there's going to be some sort of bad performance to follow. So, for example, I'm really sore. I don't think this lifting complex is going to go well. Or my lungs are kind of shot. I think I should back off this next one a little bit. So creating some sort of projection into the future of what that thing means. And again, I think you could tie this back to times when you're like, okay, I've been extremely sore before and I've gone out and performed really well. I remember when I was at TFX, I was so sore from the first run of it. I think part of it was because we ran through like 3 inches of mud for a half mile or so, and that just really ruined my legs. I could barely walk. I was so sore. So I was taking ibuprofen. I was doing everything I could to try to like stretch out a bit, doing extended warm-ups, but I was still extremely sore. And yeah, I went out and like won an event the next day that had squatting in it, right? It was like, okay, I could blame that, like, okay, my legs are like shot, that I'm not going to be able to perform. Or I could go and like think back, competing down the road and think back, okay, was at this event, I felt absolutely awful, I don't actually feel as bad as I did then, and I performed great then. Okay, I'm going to be able to perform when it matters now. So it's calling on past performances, things that you've done before that you can remind yourself of, and kind of talking your way through it in a positive way. So for example, I'm really sore, and then it's just like a matter of like, again, having your language kind of coax you into your best performance. I'm really sore. I'm going to do a little extra soft tissue work here in a few minutes. It's like, what can I do right now to get to my best performance? My legs are kind of shot. I'm going to probably spend a couple extra minutes on the bike at a low cadence just to get my body moving a bit and allow my breathing kind of ease into it a bit more. So I've done a podcast before on, I think it was like words of winners or something like that, right? Like basically like self-talk and language. I'll probably repost that one soon. But that's something that is often overlooked, I think, and it's extremely important. Whether you're a competitor or someone who's just trying to be at your best in the gym, because we have a lot of members who do the same thing at our gym, where you hear the negative self-talk come out, and I correct it actually a lot here at the gym. Okay, next, squeeze out excuses. You can kind of see these are all sort of in the same vein. Yeah, I mean, nothing is ever ideal in competition, right? And don't let the pressure of having or like wanting a perfect performance to ruin a good performance. So the quote, and that was like from an Instagram post that I wrote up, the intro. One of the things I said was, many an athlete has applied themselves partly to something, being too scared to take the responsibility of saying they did their best. I think this is extremely common of athletes just self-sabotaging. They're looking for an excuse to preserve their ego when that sort of thing happens. And again, I think it's just like a matter of like reminding yourself of certain things. Like even the best CrossFit athletes in the world don't win every event, right? Like losing events, like having bad events, that is just part of the sport. So if you're someone who wants to still get to your best aggregate placing across the weekend, and you just want to get to your highest point total, which is that's the goal of competition, right? Accumulate as many points as you can, hopefully more than the second place person. Then you're not looking for perfection, right? You're just looking to get as many points as you can. So that goes for like how you talk to yourself. That goes for how you prepare for events. That goes for how you pace events. There's obviously so much that goes into it, which makes this sport fun. But it starts with the reality that like you're probably never going to have a perfect competition, right? And for me personally, I said like Mekon Rush of 2025 was without a doubt the best competition experience in terms of execution that I've ever had. And I didn't get on the podium at that event. I thought I could potentially win that event. I certainly thought I could get on the podium. I wasn't even on the podium. I was off by a few points. But, and again, this I don't want to go off on a rabbit hole here, but like programming obviously dictates a lot of that, right? So it's like if the events aren't exactly what I need to be at, like, you know, to maximize my points on a particular like competition, and then obviously like my fitness level going into it, like all those things impact like just how things are going to play out across a weekend. So that's again the challenge in our sport versus other sports, is that the thing of it, like what you're actually doing is constantly shifting. So you have to have some other way of measuring your success in the sport besides just, you know, the events themselves or certain metrics that are tied to it or placings in events, because like the people doing it, it's going to change every time. So yeah, just being able to zoom out a bit and make sure that like you're seeing the forest through the trees. Next, I would say, and I think this is the final one here, is pacing. Pacing, you can primarily focus on internal or external factors. And I would argue that focusing on internal factors is primarily what you want to do. So external stuff would be like watching what your opponents are doing, seeing where the field is, right? If you were, doing, Formula One or something, right? You probably want to know exactly where your opponents are, what they're doing, how they're turning. Then obviously like that's going to heavily impact what you do. Whereas like because so much of what we do is dependent on your individual capacities and a variety of movements and a variety of time domains, that the field that you're racing against, so to speak, their abilities as well as yours change in every single event. So it's important that you do much more internal pacing strategies, right? So basically like how you feel in the event versus how you felt in practice. And those obviously aren't always going to be the same. How you expect to feel based on how far into a race you are versus how far you have to go, etc. One of the things that I felt extremely helpful when I'm thinking about pacing for competitions where I care about it a lot and I want to do my best is reminding myself that you can only do your best. So another way to say this would be you can't do more than your best. You can only do up to your best. You can't do more than that. So maybe this would be helpful if I used an analogy. Let's say it's a race car, right? You have a race car. That's your physiological capabilities, right? The engine, the tires you got on it, what kind of transmission you have, etc. Obviously, there's other race cars, your opponents. Then you have the actual track that you're going to be racing on, which is obviously going to matter a lot, right? If you're on dirt versus a tarmac versus I don't know what else surfaces people race on, but you get the point, right? Every time it changes. First of all, like when you show up to race on comp day, you aren't working on the car. You're not changing the engine out. Like you're working with what you got, essentially. Right? The only thing that you can do is change how you use your skills as a driver to maximize the capabilities of the car that you're currently driving. And so there's two errors that I see people make. One is trying to race if you are just outclassed, right? If someone's just got a bigger engine than you, you got a 4-cylinder and they got a V6, you're just probably not gonna outrace them on a drag race. Right? Maybe if it's some other format where that's advantageous, then you can, play it out and your gas mileage might be different, etc. Right? But like there's certain things where okay, I got to stay in my lane and just do the best that I can because I can't do any better than that. So that'd be error number one is just trying to race if you're outclassed. And then two would be like never racing because you're scared to hurt. Okay. And that's obviously where this analogy falls short is that like the interplay of your mind and psychology so heavily influences your physiology. And there is so much that you are going to be willing to do when it comes to a competition day because you drove across the country or flew across the country to get somewhere, because you've got people watching you, because it actually counts, because there's prize money on the line, because there's, a different level of pride associated with it, like so many different factors. But if you're someone who's scared to hurt, or you're scared to spill over, you're scared to redline, if you're just scared, you're just not going to be willing to push that deep. And that's necessary to find what your true capacities are. So you can't be scared to go up against that. But then you also need to understand that if you push it too hard and try to race with people where you just might be outclassed in a certain event, then the chances of the wheels coming off is much, much higher. So you just got to be aware that if you're flying close to the sun that you might get burned. I think I'm done with all the analogies for now. So in my opinion, what would be the ideal then for pacing, right? It's like staying within yourself primarily, meaning that you're using a lot of those internal landmarks, so to speak. I know I feel this way in the event, this deep into it, versus in practice I felt this way. And based on all my experiences of events similar to this, I know I'm doing okay, or I feel like I'm getting closer to the red line. I should probably back off a little bit because I got 60% of the event left. Little things like that. Again, they're very challenging to articulate. A coach can't tell you when to break. You just need to know based on your experiences. So again, I would say ideal, staying within yourself, primarily thinking about those internal landmarks, but allowing external stimuli to help you leverage new gears at the end of events. So, in other words, using the environment that you're in, using the people that you're surrounded by to help essentially suck you into a new gear. The Ricky Bob shake and bake slingshot, right? It's just using, like leveraging your environment to call on a whole new level that you didn't know was there. But again, you can't do that in every single event, right? You can't do that for a legless rope climb. No amount of motivation is gonna allow you to get up the rope if your biceps is just kaput, right? Whereas like a thruster burpee, gross couplet, you can probably leverage that a bit more. So being intentional about using the people around you to leverage that to get to your best. But again, primarily staying within yourself because that's what we know gets you to your best performance, because you can't do more than you're capable of. So last things here, I would say, like, I can tell you about all this stuff, but you're not going to learn it, and you can't really learn it until you actually go out and step on the floor. So having a coach doesn't mean that you get to like skip learning anything, I would say. However, a good coach can definitely help accelerate your rate of learning and allow you to get better a whole lot faster. Thanks for listening. Stay the course.